Well, if we're talking budgets, there's a few people better for ripping in to Democratic capitulation than Sam Cedar. He's a lefty from way back, I'm told, and he has really been a guiding light in heckling those who are on our side in the general election, and at basically no other time. Let's look at how he feels about the debt ceiling debacle. That debacle might be a little hard. I think Biden did a good job executing the strategy he was trying to execute. We just disagree on whether or not he should have been negotiating with these devils in the first place. Let's listen to the Majority Report breakdown.
I know 15 weeks is not where any.
This is not that. Let's try this instead. Stand by. Great. It's great TV, folks. Hey, there we
Sometimes
go.
I think it's very hard for people to really understand how incompetent politicians can sometimes be. I mean, honestly, I've used this example many times before, but back in the days when we were at Air America, which was the radio network, people would send us emails saying, like, we think there's a mole working in your place because, and I thought, like, this is actually not an irrational reaction to have, because I'm inside this building and it's hard for me to believe the level of incompetence I'm witnessing. And I can't help but think that that's what's going on here. And you wrote a piece yesterday dealing with that. Let's just start with that when we're talking about the debt ceiling. Your assessment of, like, why we are watching this slow motion debacle happen coming out of the White House.
Yeah, I mean,
Before this man who is significantly more accomplished than I, who is about to rag on him, gets into it, I do need to just rag on journalists in general. Hey, folks, fellas, ladies, when you're gonna do an interview, could you just please stop using those freaking college kid headphones with the built-in mic? I understand if you're like a scientist or something, or an actual college kid, or if your profession isn't necessarily being on camera. And granted, this is a person who writes for a living. But a microphone costs about $60, and it doesn't go every time you scratch your neck. And if I hear it this time, I'm gonna laugh, actually. But there's my pettiness for the day. Got to fill that quota.
I mean, there's many different places that you
Right
can
away.
start, but I think one key place to just start is Biden himself. So much of what Biden has come with into his administration, for good and for ill, has been his quote unquote lessons that he's taken from being a first-hand witness to what was going on in the Obama administration. And in one example, that was good. He was absolutely convinced that we should just get out of Afghanistan. That was the last thing he'd really thought about that subject, and he just had stuck with that and got out despite the chattering classes all screaming against it. So in that example, it was good. In the debt ceiling example, it's not so good. So the last time he paid attention, 2011.
Gotta eat my words. It says right on the bottom, he's an economist. He's not a journalist. Okay, words eaten. Apologies.
That was seen as, didn't go well in a certain sense, although there was political advantage in the idea of that somehow that had some relation to Obama getting elected. I'll get back to that. But then in 2013, after Obama wins, the Republicans are weakened. The sort of like Tea Party energy wave is in a complicated, different place. And Biden looks at that, remembers that period, and thinks, Well, the debt ceiling increases then were mostly clean debt ceiling increases. There was like a little bit of like putting congressmen's wages into escrow, congresspeople's wages into escrow. There was a little bit of like, let's get to, let's create a bipartisan conference on the debt, blah blah blah. But for the most part, they did not successfully use the debt ceiling as a chip to get cuts. That wasn't what they were able to do with it, and other things were going on, like the government shutdown. But they weren't able to use the debt ceiling as this big hostage speech in 2013. And so that's the last time Biden's really thought about these issues. So Biden's thought is, well, let's just do 2013 again. And that's where this idea of not doing any negotiations come from. If we just say we won't negotiate, that's a position of strength. They'll fold over like they did in 2013. And
Okay, well, I don't know that he necessarily went that far, but he's not wrong. I mean, if you're talking like the basics of a negotiation of any sort, if you start by saying I'm not negotiating on this, you can certainly argue that that's going to make it so that the very negotiation, as Lawrence O'Donnell was pointing out, the very negotiation can be seen as a victory, particularly if the party you're entering into this negotiation with doesn't really care. Can't stress enough. The Kevin McCarthy in the House is just trying to get through the day. I'm sure he's got bribes to take. He's got to try to earn them. Yeah, but I don't think anybody really believed he was going to get much done with MAGA being what it is.
And that's really the core issue is this, that we're in a very different political situation, that Trump happens, that the transformation of the Republican Party under Trump, and that Republicans don't feel weak the way they did in 2013. And also you didn't have very different style of Republicans who could more readily cede to business pressure, and there was business pressure to cede to. That was fundamentally what our core problem is it's a playbook that has not paid attention to how the terrain has changed.
And they thought that McCarthy wouldn't be able to get that cut, save, and whatever bill, his budget bill. They thought he wasn't going to be able to pass that, and they seemingly had absolutely no concept that we might need a plan B. And so we hear and you make this argument that it is really just it's a failure of strategy, it's a failure of competence, or however you want to characterize that, but it's not some type of secret way of introducing austerity, because this would be the stupidest way to possibly do it, it seems to me. Like, they don't get any political value out of it. They don't get any political cover, and it's not an effective way of austerity. It's just incompetence.
Well, there is a way. I mean, my story, I would say, is a mixture of incompetence and maliciousness, because there is a piece of it that is malicious, that is dangerous, which is starting the game of chicken itself. And you start the game of chicken by saying these unilateral options are so terrible, we can't do them, because if a unilateral option is viable, then it gives you, quote unquote, too much negotiating leverage. And thus, there's no possibility of coming together to do a deal. You might actually be forced to do one of you.
I don't know, man. This is why, generally speaking, I just think when he said no negotiation, I unironically thought that was a good idea. I thought that was a good entire plan. And frankly, with the Republican Party in general at this point, I don't see the benefit in treating them like they're a normal political party. They're not. They are not. In fact, I see a lot of harm in treating them like they're a normal political party. I think Joe Biden's plan here is to out-normal them and out-polite them. But there surely is a problem with making it seem like everything's fine when there's a knife-wielding psychopath in the living room charging at people. It's not time to put on the ball game. We got to deal with this. Step one is when they do stuff like this, when they threaten the U.S. economy, we say, okay, well, looks like we don't negotiate the debt ceiling anymore. I'm just signing it. If you want to object to this in court, fine. And then next time, we'll have to have this negotiation if I lose in court. But I don't think I will, because nobody wants you people really in charge of anything. At least nobody who knows how things work.
Your unilateral options, and from their point of view, they think that was the political loser. So the idea is always that bipartisanship is supposed to be the political winner, that there is some big audience among American voters for bipartisanship that will then show your seriousness. And
we actually need to take a page out of the MAGA playbook there and start communicating to our representatives that we see a deal made with these devils as a problem. Bipartisanship needs to be viewed as a political loser. If you work with MAGA, you have to have a real good reason. I'm not saying it's got to be verboten. Not necessarily. But you have to have a real good reason. And if you worked with MAGA, that will taint whatever you got done. The reason being, they make everything worse. And if you ever have a bill that they get involved with, you've got to scrutinize it real close to make sure they didn't put in language that, turns America into a fascist state or sells all of our children to a Saudi prince or whatever the hell. It's a problem. They are sinister creatures, MAGA politicians, and we need to disabuse our leaders, our political leaders, of the notion that we have any interest in bipartisanship. And I realize that they always make the bet. The people that don't like extremists, that don't like out racists, the people that don't like MAGA, terrorists. The people that don't like terrorists will put up with it, always. And they think that there's a bunch of people in the middle that will be pleased by this. We need to disabuse them of that notion. If you yourself are somebody who is a bit of a centrist, announce that to your representatives and tell them you don't want to see them working with MAGA. But regardless, tell your representatives that you do not want to see them working with MAGA. Not if it can be helped.
Realness and all of that. So there is malicious in the sense that they are telling stories, they are lying about unilateral options in order to get a game of chicken. And they're fine with doing some cuts to get there. If they ultimately at the end get a little bit of cuts and some there that that ultimately gets the deal, they'll do that and they don't care about who gets hurt from that. What hasn't worked out is that they screwed up the game of chicken. They thought that they could get a game of chicken, they'd get a deal, there'd be a little bit
Real quick, anti-corporatist. Yeah, I didn't comment earlier because you were popping out for a moment, but you said Jank and Anna over at the Young Turks. Christ, over at the I cannot speak today. I don't know what is happening. Over at the Young Turks, are black pilled on the debt ceiling debate. Tell me about that. I'm curious to know what's how are they black pilled? Let me know.
The cuts, and they would look, and then like that would make the Republicans look bad. That would make them look good. Things would work out. Instead, the Republicans are just not interested in negotiating. The Republicans are saying they literally. I mean, Matt Gaetz said it yesterday. People. The people in their caucus don't feel like quote negotiating with their hostage.
Let's play this clip for a second because I have some questions as to who the hostage is here that he's referring to, because it could be like a half a dozen different options as to who that might be. Here's that clip.
Pulling it up.
Oh, it's not just me. Thank God.
We're pulling it up.
Yeah.
All right, forget the point is do we have it?
Yeah. We
All right, let's just read the clip. We don't need the clip.
No, we got it right here. We got it.
Oh, delightful.
So this is a semaphore reporter, Joseph Zabalos-Roig, essentially speaking to Matt Gaetz.
Would you say then the conservatives like yourself are becoming more pessimistic about the state of negotiations if, there's a bipartisan deal in sight maybe? Or how would you characterize the mood among your conservative colleagues right now?
I think my conservative colleagues, for the most part, support limit, save, grow, and they don't feel like we should negotiate with our hostage.
Okay, who is the hostage? What is it Kevin McCarthy?
Oh my God. One thing I will always appreciate about MAGA politicians is that they're too dumb to lie, but they've chosen being criminal liars as a career. It's delightful. I've known lots of folks that are too dumb to lie. Nothing wrong with that. I don't think you're supposed to say out loud that you took the country hostage. But yes, I wonder who is the hostage that he's referring to here specifically.
I mean, it could be. I mean, I interpret it, and I think this is straightforward, that the hostage is Biden. That the hostage is the Biden administration.
Is it the economy? Is it the economy broadly?
I mean, that's the economy as well as the hostage. But I think fundamentally, it's Biden. They feel like they have him trapped, and they're right, because the Biden administration is doing everything possible to talk down the unilateral options, to get a negotiation, to force Republicans to the table to accept a deal with cuts, and the Biden administration has given up any leverage, and it's just said, this is us. This is our issue. We're screwed.
Wink, wink. We should all just do this. And the Republicans are basically saying, well, it looks like we don't just have to do this. They're now asking for going beyond grow, limit, save, or whatever the name of that bill is. And they're asking for more money for the military. So, they're just, and this has happened to Biden before in the past, where he tries to give up everything and they just won't take yes for an answer.
Oh, good God. There it is. Won't take yes for an answer. That's a really good way to put it. I would suggest that going off what Sam said in the beginning, our politicians need a better picture of how we feel. To some degree, I'm sure that Democrats are excited about some of the horrors that get done by Republicans because it'll make some of the same donors happy. But I do think most of the time, it's just that they are tone deaf and dumb. And we should make it very easy for them to know that we're not into the idea of them making deals with hostage takers. We don't like seeing them work with MAGA. We don't like seeing them reach across the aisle. Seeing them reach across the aisle means they've learned nothing from the last, 7 years? Means they don't understand what's going on. They don't deserve to be in a position of leadership because we can't be led by people that have no sense of what dangers our country faces. There should be a political cost to working with these people. Inform them that your primary vote will be largely determined by how much you see the Democrats in office working with MAGA. And the more you see of it, the less likely you are to vote for them. So those issues which they are willing to talk with these people on better be picked very carefully. Let's see what the wicked community has to say.